What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show today. And a little bit of a dirty wire there. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. I don't know that I'm going to be able to take a lot of phone calls because we do have so much to talk about. But Dan is in our control room, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. And there's a lot of stuff happening. It's moving very, very rapidly. The latest is that they just had the Security Council vote regarding the U.S.-backed Syria resolution, and China abstained from voting. Russia vetoed it, and they vetoed it on the grounds that the resolution is written basically on the assumption that Assad did it, and we're going to condemn him for it, and we're going to have an investigation to find the evidence after the fact. And Russia said that they would be much more open to an independent international third-party investigation that wasn't under the influence of the U.S. or U.K. governments to try and get to the bottom of this. But we really don't need an investigation. The story never made any sense at all. Assad was winning his war. They were already getting ready to start peace talks up in Brussels to end the war. 2 weeks ago, the White House was saying that Assad could remain in power if he wins the next election. What is Assad's motive for doing something like this? There isn't one. And if you're talking about a crime, especially a war crime, there must be a motive. And there wasn't one. It never made sense. It didn't make sense in 2013. It didn't make sense in 2014. We don't need an investigation. The story is junk on the face of it. Now, the U.S. did not fare much better in Moscow. Tillerson basically got frozen out. This is how it's being described in the foreign press. They had 2 hours of talks, and Tillerson left with nothing to show for it. Russia is still saying they are not buying the story that Assad gassed his own people, because the Russians can actually think, people. And then, of course, Russia said, we have to remember how the U.S. government lied about Iraq and Libya and all these other places to start the wars. And unfortunately, what we've done now is we've gone through a terrible diplomatic transition. The people are not talking about the facts and the logic and the law and what happened. They're basically down to thumping their chests and saying, it's the way we say it is because we're the ones who are saying it's the way it is. In other words, the U.S. position is, we don't care if it's a lie, you will believe it and act on it, or we will do terrible things to you. And it's creating an image of a United States that really has gone rogue, that's rash, impulsive, dangerous. And remember, the United States remains the only country to ever actually use nuclear weapons of mass destruction on another country. We all need to keep that in mind. Now, Russia slammed Trump for the absurd demand of simply cutting off their support for Syria, and has issued, again, the warning to Tillerson, do not attack Syria again. Now, Trump came on out with a statement saying that we're not going to make war on Syria. There's already reason to doubt that he was telling the truth about that. But all it's going to take is a few more of these false flag attacks, and Trump is going to get up there and say, I have no choice but to go on back in. Meanwhile, Russia is slamming all of the NATO leaders who are going along with this U.S. fraud, describing them as nodding like bobbleheads. Oh, yes, Assad's a bad guy. Oh, yes, we must invade. Oh, yes, absolutely. I think it's a good image. But the reality is, the United States government and Donald Trump violated international law in Syria. They must be getting used to it by now. Now, Tulsi Gabbard is still out there, despite all the pressure pounding down on her, saying we have to remember the lessons of Iraq and Libya. We have been lied into war before, to which I would add we need to remember the lessons of torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin, Spanish mine in Havana Harbor. Trust us, the Lusitania wasn't smuggling weapons to Great Britain. Pearl Harbor really was a surprise. Honest, cross our hearts and hope that somebody else dies. But what she's saying makes common sense. We should know beyond a shadow of a doubt what the real story is before we take any action. Our entire justice system is supposed to be based on a principle demanding proof beyond a reasonable doubt before punishment is inflicted. And instead, our foreign policy is we're going to accuse you of doing something nasty and then punish you for it before the truth can come on out. Now, the White House has released a National Security Council intelligence dossier, which they claim is the proof Assad is guilty. No, it isn't. Accusations do not constitute proof. A government report does not constitute proof of anything real. Look at all the garbage they've been dishing out about human-caused global warming. And taking a good look at this report, it looks like it's a hasty rewrite of the 2013 Obama dossier on Assad, which turned out to be a complete hoax. Because Assad did not gas his own people back in 2013 or 2014 or earlier this month. There's no motive. That's the part that's missing. To figure out if you're being lied to, look for what should be there and is not. And what is not there is a reason for Assad to do something like that at this particular point, knowing that it will cause nothing but harm to Assad and nothing but assistance to his enemies. Needless to say, the liberal leaders are out there saying, we've got to get rid of Tulsi Gabbard, and apparently the move to ouster from the House of Representatives has been met with a very cold response. So now we have Howard Dean and Neera Tanden are out there saying they're going to mount a campaign against Tulsi here in Hawaii the next time that she's running for her seat, which I guess would be next year. So, Tulsi, if you're listening to me, I am going to support you on your next election to the House of Representatives. It's got nothing to do with whether I'm a Republican or a Democrat. It has everything to do with doing what's right, which is what you've been doing. Now, here's where it gets really good. First of all, we're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our nation. Story came out in antiwar.com. U.S. officials can't explain the reason for the Syria chemical attack. They've been out there saying Assad gassed his own people and Assad gassed his own people, and more people are coming up and saying, why would he do something that stupid? And the government is saying, well, we can't explain it. We don't actually really know. And so now they're trying to change the story that it wasn't really an attack on civilians. It was an attack on an area, an operational target away from the actual Syrian rebels for operational purposes, blah, 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 which doesn't make any sense at all. And they're trying to change the story. Next, they'll claim there was a Branch Davidian church there on the ground. But clearly, the U.S. government is finally starting to understand the people of the United States and the world are no longer the naive, trusting, gullible fools of the 1950s. We question, we doubt, we analyze. The government lied. We know the government lied. The government knows. We know they lied. What do? Come up with another lie. If at first you don't succeed, lie, lie again. The motto of the federal government of the United States of America. Well, Donald Trump has taken the position, we don't have to explain the reason he's an evil person. Assad is just this evil person. Evil, 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 evil. I would be very careful hurling that label around, Mr. President, because right now there's a lot of people who supported you in your election who are now starting to see you as evil. So be careful of the backflash on that one. All right, we're going to take a couple of quick phone calls here. Nico in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I don't think the people are buying the official story. Initially, some people that I spoke with, they were going for it. But I think that these people who are trying to pass this off as Assad is evil, I think they're underestimating the intelligence and the lack of faith that the American people have in the official story and the media. And this is what I'm coming across.
Yeah, that's what I'm finding too. Yeah. You know, you're absolutely correct. The government and the corporate media have a massive credibility problem of their own creating. I have no sympathy for them. And anybody who's out there saying, well, you know, did you hear Assad gassed his own people? And my response is, this is the 2017 version of Saddam has nuclear weapons. And immediately the light goes on. Immediately the light goes on and they realize they're being had again.
Oh, yeah, and I'm with you. And I'm the one who emailed you a little back and forth. I was having a hard time with people, but now even those people are starting to listen. And I simply asked them, why would he do that to his own people? Why? And their only answer is, well, he's a madman. And I said, what are you talking about? This man's been empowered for years. His father was empowered. Long story short, if your only answer is he's a madman, I'm going to ask you, where are you getting your information?
Well, something else you can ask them right there, ask them just how successful the American Revolution would have been if George Washington had been shooting the colonists instead of the British soldiers. Just ask them that one. Let them chew on that for a while.
Oh, that's good, Mike. I appreciate everything, man. Thank you so much. Aloha.
Aloha. We're going to switch over to David in Oklahoma. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, thank you so much, Michael. You do a great service for us all. Okay, so what if Trump goes to Congress and everybody thinks he's going to declare war on Syria, and instead we need to declare war on the deep state?
That would be like walking into a Hells Angels bar and screaming, all you pussy bikers suck at the top of your lungs. Congress is part of the deep state.
Is it remotely possible that maybe Trump is doing all this to help flush out and put in the Sicarius guy on CNN and John McCain and Minnie Lindsay? Is it possible maybe that Trump is trying to flush these people out by having this strike in Syria to who the cheerleaders are?
He doesn't need to flush them out. Anybody who's paying attention to the independent media has identified the main players on all of this stuff. No, I'm afraid from where I sit, and I'd be happy to be proven wrong, but it looks like Donald Trump has run up the white flag, and he's joined the war party, and he's all buddy-buddy, cozy with the neocon warmongers. And no, I am not seeing him having the courage, the spine, the fortitude, whatever you want to call it, to take on the deep state. He has surrendered.
Okay. So does that mean that all future presidents then, Michael, are compromised in one way? In other words, whoever we think is an angel is going to be, through Google and the deep state, they're going to find something on this guy, and so should we just resign ourselves?
Well, they would want to, but at this point, I am beginning to think that Donald Trump is going to be the last president of the United States of America. We're not going to survive the next 4 years. It's either going to be a massive economic meltdown leading to the collapse of the federal government in like the way the Soviet Union did, or we're actually going to get into these hot wars, which we will lose. So I don't think we need to worry about future elections. We need to worry about restoring a future government to this land. That's what we got to be thinking about right now, okay?
You're absolutely right, Michael. Thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to go to Scott in North Dakota. Aloha, Scott. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I just got done calling the White House. You can get through. It took 2 days to get through. It was busy.
Yes, I can imagine.
They have volunteers manning the phone, and I told them exactly what I said. I was a Trump supporter. When he sent those missiles off, that's it. There's no coming back from that. I will never vote for him again. I don't care what he does for the rest of his term. He's done. I don't want any continuation, even if it's a sliver of the Bush foreign policy, not even just a footnote of that policy. If I even sense it from a politician, will they ever get my vote? And here's how I feel about Trump. As an analogy, it would be like you taking your dog for a walk and you see somebody else kicking their dog. Imagine how angry you'd be. What Trump did is as if he came over and kicked your dog. That's how, it's just, there's no coming back from him. And what really gets me is it's barely 3 months into his term before he betrayed us.
Yeah.
He couldn't even hold out 3 months.
Yeah.
And the rationale for us doing anything in Syria We don't have a history of being successful at this. So no matter how justified the situation may lend itself today, which I don't think it is, to interfere, we're not the ones to be interfering. We don't have a successful track history of fixing things like this.
No, we don't. Every intervention has always made the country being intervened in worse because it's being looted and plundered for corporate interests. And the reality is that all the fancy movies and the military channel and the rest of it, I think it's been something like 70 years since the Pentagon actually won a major war. They've had all these little police actions, half of them turned into quagmires that we had to walk out of with our heads held high. We're certainly not winning in Afghanistan. We're not winning in Iraq. We're stuck in quagmires in Yemen and Libya. We've been in Syria for almost 6 years now with no success there. And our military rank and file are disheartened. Our stockpiles are drawn down. Our equipment is all worn out. The stuff that's being built to replace it is all junk. This is a recipe for a disaster if this war agenda is followed any further.
And we don't have the money for it.
No, we don't.
We're over $20 trillion in debt.
Oh, the bankers will be happy to loan us more money created out of thin air at interest to pay for another war, and then after the war is over, they'll loan us another quadrillion created out of thin air at interest for us to rebuild. That's the scam that the private central banks do. The private central bankers love wars. That's their richest harvest of debt is coming from causing wars, and they don't care which side wins or loses. And that's why they're not hesitating to drive the United States forward into this war. If we lose, too bad. They make money off both sides.
And as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, countries that don't have a private central bank so far are North Korea, Syria, and I don't know if Iran has a private central bank or not, but it's just very odd.
They have a state central bank. Yeah, that's what this is. They're trying to bring the whole world into the slavery of the private central bankers, and they're getting dangerously close, and they're risking incineration of the surface of planet Earth in this stupid argument over whose brand of ink and paper we use for currency for the next 100 years.
What's really scary to me, Mike, is how many otherwise intelligent people they're against the Syrian attack on Syria, but they're all for the attack on North Korea. North Korea hasn't done anything to anybody.
Yeah, I dare anybody,
other than their own people.
Take a map of the United States, okay? I dare anybody to take a map of the United States and show me just where on that map Syria has attacked us, North Korea has attacked us, Iraq has attacked us, Libya has attacked us, Yemen has attacked us, or any of these other countries we've gone in and mucked about with. You show me where on that map of the United States we have suffered a foreign attack or invasion.
This is nothing but a schoolyard bully taking on the most unpopular, weakest kid in the schoolyard.
That's exactly what it is.
Basically what it is. And it's ridiculous. And Trump's done.
But can I share an insight from my childhood? Because I was that, least popular small kid in the schoolyard. Every once in a while, the least popular kid will decide to heck with it and take a swing, and sometimes they get very lucky because I put the bully on his back with a bloody nose.
I think that's going to happen to Trump.
I think that's going to happen to the United States, and that's what I would like to avoid.
Because the people that are feeding him a bunch of BS about going to war are going to be the first ones to turn on the slightest defeat in any conflict.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Harry Truman used to say, the Oval Office is the hottest kitchen in the world. And he's absolutely right about that. But Trump did want the job, and for better or worse, he's now stuck with it. Apparently, some of his loyalists are out there and saying, well, Trump just didn't understand that the intelligence agencies might lie to him about the Assad gassing his own people. So now they understand the lie has failed. It's cratered. And now they're looking for somebody to dump it on, which is actually a very good sign. But yeah, look at the lies about Assad, look at the lies about Saddam's nuclear weapons, and realize you're being lied to just as much about North Korea. Anyway, we have to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the call, Scott. We'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're going to take one more phone call. Then we're going to close the lines for a bit because I got lots of stuff to get through. Mo in Florida, what is on your mind?
Hi, Michael. I'll try to be brief. I try to keep my cool because this thing with Trump is so bizarre because, if you just look at anything. If there's an accident, a traffic accident, if there's look at the Marine barracks when they blew it up in, what was it, 83?
Mm-hmm.
They had the FBI, Department of Justice. There was no investigation. He didn't do anything. He just sent a bunch of freaking outdated Tomahawk missiles. And what? This is an era of judgment. This is a crisis of judgment. Even if Assad did do it, which everybody knows he didn't, that doesn't follow the brain numbing media, the mainstream media. Everybody knows. So this is an era of judgment. This is bad judgment, Michael. That's the worst thing about it.
Yes, it was bad judgment.
He was an idiot.
It was reckless. It sent a very negative image of the U.S. to the rest of the world, of the U.S. government to the rest of the world. And then they followed it up with that lame story about how Donald Trump was influenced into the cruise missile attack because his daughter Ivanka was upset by the pictures. What kind of an image of the presidency is that putting on out?
I'm embarrassed, Michael. I voted for Trump and Pence, and the only other person I ever campaigned for was Ron Paul. And I am disheartened. This is, if somebody went out there and messed with your car, what would you do? Go shoot him? No, let me get some pictures. If you didn't see him, let's get an investigation. And on a grand scale, he got suckered into this, Michael. Because he's an egotist. The children. None of it makes any sense. You hit it right on the head. Who better? Kay Bono, right?
Yeah. Well, now they're trying to change the story around to make it look like it was a reasonable thing to do. I mean, first of all, they said, that it was an attack on civilians. Now they're backing off and saying, well, some civilians got caught in something else, but still Assad is an evil person, and we were justified sending in the cruise missiles. Then they tried that whopper about how these cluster bomb cases, the empty cases, there's proof he's got chemical weapons. And they're just throwing the lies as thick and fast as they can, and they don't realize each new exposed lie is only undermining what little trust and faith the American people have in this government.
Michael, my last thought. I'm hurrying because I know you want to get rid of the calls for now, but the worst thing of all, this guy's on a hair trigger. We're talking about hitting the button. This just told the Russians. I got goosebumps. This just told the Russians and the Chinese that this guy's a loose cannon. He just hits them all. Their children, the button. Every leader of every nuclear-armed nation got that message, that Trump could hit that button without any warning whatsoever on the basis of a fairy tale, and that is going to make them much more willing to hit the button if they even think that Trump might react recklessly and dangerously on the basis of ginned-up false information. Anyway, Mo, we're going to let you go here. We're going to close the phone lines for a little while and get back to the news here. Now, the other day, Trump came on out and said, well, we hit that airfield to punish Assad for gassing his own people, and we're not changing our Syria policy. We're there to get ISIS, and we're not making war on Syria, even though Sean Spicer did a Freudian slip in his news conference yesterday saying that the mission of the U.S. in Syria is to destabilize Syria. And then he tried to back up and correct it. He's not having a very good week over there between that one and the Holocaust issue. But Lindsey Graham and John McCain have just issued a joint statement saying it is impossible to separate ISIS from Assad because Iran is backing both of them, and therefore to get ISIS out of Syria, you have to get Assad. Forgetting the fact that ISIS has been fighting against Assad all this time. And Iran isn't backing ISIS, the United States is. So we've really reached the point where they know they can't tell the American people the truth about what's going on. All they can think of doing is let's come up with an even more shocking lie, and hopefully that will overwhelm their sense of reason and analytical thinking, and the shock and horror will carry the day. Not likely to happen. We've seen that tactic before. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Now, global condemnation continues to pour on Trump's cruise missile attack on Syria. Global rejection, ridicule, and abuse continues to pour all over this third strike attempt to claim Assad was gassing his own people
without even coming up for any kind of a reason for him to do it. George Galloway is out there saying that Assad is not mad enough to carry this out. And anybody who says that he did it, they're either a fool or trying to fool you. That's not pulling any punches on that one. Now, the same intelligence and military sources who warned you about the lie that Saddam had nuclear weapons before the Iraq War are now coming out to say that Assad did not launch a chemical weapon attack either earlier this month, 2013, or 2014. It was absurd. It was incredibly stupid to even try this same piece of propaganda after it's already been discredited twice. Over at MIT, the professor who had called into question the 2013 attack, along with UN chemical weapons inspectors, is saying, yeah, this is just a repeat of the same thing. And all we have over at the White House is they've got some papers in a cupboard and say, this is the proof, this is the proof. Reminds me of Joseph McCarthy's, I have a list of names, and the fact that their name is on this paper proves they're a communist. But this professor has read this report that was put out by the National Security Council, and he says there's nothing in it. It's nothing but accusations with nothing to support it. And apparently the White House is down to hoping that U.S. government on the label will make you magically forget all the times that U.S. government has lied to you, and that you will drink this latest batch of USDA choice-approved Kool-Aid. Now, more evidence is starting to surface that this was, in fact, an actual false flag attack and not an accidental detonation of rebel chemical weapons, because over on Twitter, somebody located a tweet by an anti-Assad reporter tweeting about the sarin gas attack in Syria 24 hours before it actually happened. So you think about that. That's been, for some reason, a very common mistake they tend to make. Others are looking back at the videos that were put out by the White Helmets, who we know are aligned with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and opposed to Assad, and they're saying they have all these inconsistencies where they're handling the bodies of supposed sarin gas victims without gloves. There are some videos in which the dead bodies are moving or opening their eyes to see if the camera's gone by. There's one wonderful clip where they go over this guy who's just died horribly, and as they're passing over him in the background, you see him crack up laughing at the silliness of it all. There's some of these so-called first responders just standing there among the dead bodies, supposedly with all this toxic sarin gas around, and they're lighting up cigarettes. Anyway, Robert Steele is out with a video. We put it up on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com. He is saying that he has a very highly placed source who he trusts implicitly, saying that Brennan, McCain, and McMaster orchestrated this false flag attack in Syria. Putin is now out there saying it was a false flag. He's backed away from this accidental bombing of a rebel chemical weapons depot and saying it is a false flag and there are more coming. Now, do you remember back in February of last year, on the campaign trail, when Donald Trump basically said George W. Bush lied to get the U.S. into the war in Iraq, and he brought up this whole issue about weapons of mass destruction. And we all cheered. Finally, somebody was out there saying what we already knew, that it had been a lie. And here we are all this time later, and Trump has turned into another Bush. Maybe they went over to Westworld and they had that company manufacture a copy of Donald Trump, reprogram him. Because he sure doesn't seem like the Donald Trump we knew and loved last year, not one large bit. Now, apparently, according to a story that's coming out of Activist Post, a very large U.S. military convoy is heading to a new base in northern Syria. Small little reminder, the U.S. does not have permission to be in Syria from Syria's legitimate government. But they seem to have this idea that they can go wherever they want and do whatever they want. And like I said earlier in the show, take a map of the United States of America I challenge anybody to show anywhere on that map where we have been attacked by Syria, or Iraq, or Afghanistan, or Libya, or Yemen, or Iran, or North Korea. Another article over at Feast and Famine. The problem isn't poison gas, it's poison intel. And we already had confirmation from another source. McMaster's has been manipulating the intelligence going to Donald Trump. They did the same thing to John F. Kennedy. They focused their efforts on McNamara, who Kennedy trusted more than anybody else. They got McNamara cocooned with their own people so that the only information getting through to McNamara was the information they selected to get McNamara to go along with their agenda and convince John F. Kennedy to do the same in Vietnam. That's how presidents can be co-opted without even realizing it. And it's another reason why Donald Trump, instead of being magnanimous in victory and allowing all these holdovers and these neocons to come on back in, he should have scraped out the White House, the executive office building, and brought in people who know how to do things, make things happen, who are not part of the traditional political class, and therefore are not compromised. So, here's a breaking development, and it bodes well. The New York Times is reporting that with the failure of Tillerson to convince Russia to pull their support for Syria, the U.S. is sharply cutting back their air operations over Syria out of concern they could be targeted by Russian missiles. Putin laid down the red line. If the U.S. forces harm any Russian forces, and apparently Russians were killed at that strike on the Syrian airbase, along with civilians, they will be engaged, and those missiles are very, very good at what they do. Now, there's another dimension to all of this, and it has to do with what may have started the escalation a few weeks back when Israel went on in and launched a series of air assaults on Syria, one near the ancient city of Palmyra. And Israel's excuse was that they wanted to prevent Syria transferring weapons, or Hezbollah from transferring weapons to Lebanon. Because obviously if Lebanon had those weapons, then Lebanon could resist the coming Israeli invasion. The problem is, there were no Hezbollah units within more than 100 miles of Palmyra. It was just another lie by Israel to justify going on in and bombing Syria. And they lost an airplane during that little exercise and had one other one damaged. So the attack on that base was being urged by Israel as revenge. How dare you shoot down our planes when we're bombing your country? You're not allowed to do that according to the rules we just made up. Now, somebody sent in a very interesting article, including an image of when it was originally printed. It's on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com, and it's an article describing, all the way back in 1982, Israel's plan for a Mideast empire aided by ISIS. In other words, this is confirmation that ISIS is working, at least in part, in Israel's interest, which explains why ISIS has never mounted any kind of a major attack against Israel. And the goal was to use ISIS to break up the Middle East, partition off a new Kurdistan, and start carving out more of Eretz Israel, the greater Israel, described in the Bible. Now, as you know, there's a lot of criticism coming on down Jared Kushner. He was one of the strongest voices calling for the Syrian strike, which is now a major mistake. There are calls for his resignation. So, of course, what happens? The Anti-Defamation League comes on out and says, oh, well, Kushner is just a target of online anti-Semitism. Really, it's just that old Jew hate here, because, of course, obviously, if Kushner wasn't Jewish, nobody would care that he urged Donald Trump to commit a war crime in Syria, right? Because that's acceptable behavior, okay? So if the ADL is back to playing that anti-Semite card, it means the online criticism of Kushner has hit a nerve. And again, like lies about weapons of mass destruction. Israel has overplayed the anti-Semite card. 20 years ago, if somebody said, you're an anti-Semite, you go, oh, please take it back. Take my money. Please, I can't live with the shame. And today, somebody says you're an anti-Semite, you go, okay. It's your opinion. I understand they're issuing an Abe Foxman talking doll. Abe Foxman is the head of the ADL. And you pull the string and it talks. Unfortunately, it only says one thing. You're an anti-Semite. You're an anti-Semite. You're an anti-Semite. You're an anti-Semite. Now, you know how we're always being told that it's anti-Semitic to say that Israel is exerting influence over our media. We are hearing from Business Insider that employees of Breitbart News have now been ordered by their editors not to write any stories critical of Jared Kushner. And apparently the New York Times reported last weekend, allies of Kushner were complaining to President Trump about the negative coverage he was getting. Well, if you don't want negative coverage, don't do negative things. There seems to be a common feature running through the minds of the elite that it's okay to commit war crimes, to torture, to steal other people's countries and all the rest of it. But by golly, we don't want you talking about it. It makes us look bad. No, it's not the online reporting that makes you look bad. It's your behavior that makes you look bad. It is your actions that make you look bad. And behaving like a child and then ordering nobody to talk about it out of politeness does not cure the problem. Now, over at Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, they noted 5 major U.S. newspapers, the New York Times, the Washington Compost, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, and New York Daily News, ran 18 opinion pieces about Trump's attack on Syria, all of them full of praise. None of them questioning the basis of the story that Assad gassed his own people. Just, oh, it's a wonderful thing. You should believe it's wonderful. And Claire came up with a wonderful term that I'm going to be using from now on for the corporate media. It's infobulimia, which is the swallowing of and revomiting of an official U.S. government lie onto you, the American people. So that's a new term of craft, infobulimia. Write that one down. It'll be on the quiz next period. Let's see. Another story coming out of RINF.com. Donald has just become the president of the U.S. Corporate media and political foes praise Trump's strike on Syria. He's one of theirs now. He's fully on board the war agenda. And again, they may be praising him. It's not going to do any good. Donald Trump's base, the voters who succeeded in overcoming the vote fraud used against him, don't like the established political leaders. They don't trust the corporate media. They're not going to be swayed by this sudden love affair coming out of the corporate media and establishment to Donald Trump. Donald Trump did more than blow up a Syrian airfield. He blew up any chance he has of being a two-term candidate. Anybody is going to be able to beat Donald Trump in 2020. If the Democrats are smart, they'll run Tulsi Gabbard. If the Democrats are stupid, they're going to go on trying to kick her out. Another article, this one from UNS.com, is Trump enlisting in the war party? It certainly looks like it, although it may be more accurate to say he got drafted against his will. Another article out here over at the Duran, 10 well-known deplorables now furious with Trump. And they're talking about all these people, notable people, who stood up there and supported Donald Trump, and they were denounced as deplorables by Hillary Clinton. Oh, anybody supporting Trump is deplorable. And they stood their ground and they supported Trump, and now they're turning on. They're furious. They are feeling betrayed. They're feeling used and abused. And most of them, like me, don't even care how this transformation came about. Was Donald Trump simply lied to and tricked into this attack? Did he really just decide he was going to be a war president? Did they make a copy of him over at Westworld? Who knows? I don't care. All that matters is what happened. Donald Trump launched an attack on a sovereign nation that has not attacked us, that we are not at war with, on the basis of incomplete, inaccurate, and based on the historical precedents of 2013 and 2014, likely fabricated evidence. And the other nations of the world, it's going to make them nervous. The world has become a much more dangerous place because of what Donald Trump did. For whatever reason he did it, I don't even care anymore. It's irrelevant to what's going on. Now, somebody has started a petition over at the official White House petition site, Cease Military Intervention Involvement in Syria. And, of course, I signed it, and I posted it to the front page of whatreallyhappened.com. And amazingly enough, in the last 3 hours, the number of signatures, people who've signed it, has not increased by a single one. Think about that for a minute. Even after I signed it, the number is still frozen. 3 hours later, the number is still frozen. So, now over at Zero Hedge, they've got an article that is echoing something I have been saying. Yes, we are angry with Donald Trump. We're disappointed in Donald Trump. But it's not just Donald Trump. It's a systemic problem. And in this article of Zero Hedge, it's saying, the headline, the system itself is beyond repair. There's no way to save it. It's going to continue crashing down the hillside off the edge of the cliff into either a Soviet Union-style collapse or a nuclear world war that we are going to lose. Obviously, I prefer the first option. We've got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And, I just realized I know how to get Assad kicked out. Have him fly in United Airlines. Okay, more serious stuff here. Turning to Yemen, there's a very alarming story over at the American Conservative, why U.S. troops may fight alongside Al-Qaeda in Yemen. Wow, I thought Al-Qaeda was like our enemy or something like that, along with ISIS. And now our soldiers are fighting side by side with them. And we find out President Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was sending weapons to ISIS and Al-Qaeda. I am so confused. What is really going on here? It's a little disheartening. Very weird comment from Israel's defense minister saying he wouldn't be surprised if Iran's President Rouhani is assassinated. They're coming up on elections next month, and apparently Ahmadinejad wants to re-enter public life in Iran. And all of a sudden we have Israel talking about President Rouhani. I would not be surprised if he's assassinated. What are they telegraphing? Remember in Dubai, Israel sent 27 Mossad agents to a 5-star hotel in Dubai to murder Mahmoud al-Mabou, a minor Hamas figure. It had nothing to do with Hamas or Dubai. It was a warning that Israel can go anywhere and kill anybody that they want. So keep that in mind here. All right, let's grab a phone call. Mike in Kentucky, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I talked to a few Fox News people that sit and watch, they get all their mind memes from Fox News, and they had no idea that there was a large portion of that apparently is now Saudi Arabia. Murdoch changed horses back last year. I forget why, but he's got a new head of Fox News. So
yeah, and Fox has kind of lost their independence since then.
Well, I saw a story earlier today blip up on the screen where whoever it was that Tillerson was meeting with, they were having a joint press conference, and they allowed it to go out over the air that Russia is calling for an investigation into this chemical weapons attack. Like they don't believe what they're being told. Gee, shock of the day, right?
Yeah, nobody's believing
and of course,
it.
Now the people that watch enough Fox News do because that's bull because Russia's in bed with Assad and all this sort of stuff, and I'm like, you're not.
You're making a mistake. You're making a mistake. You're making a mistake. You're assuming that the people who are watching the corporate media are actually believing what they're seeing and hearing. I watch Fox News. I watch the corporate media to find out what I'm being lied to about. And
well,
you know, I can hear in neighboring units during the news broadcast where, you know, people are screaming, "That's nonsense, that's garbage." And
I pointed out to them, though, that who benefited from it, and that the Israelis are drilling in the Golan Heights, and they're the ones that started bombing out to protect ISIS and Al Qaeda. They didn't know any of that, and they finally just went, "Oh, well, I don't know what's going on." And I'm saying, you don't. If you're only watching Fox News, you don't. You're missing out on a lot of that.
If you're watching all corporate media and nothing else, then you are deaf, dumb, and blind. We got to take a break for station identification. We will be right back.